what is controlling, why controlling is important, right? You say, yeah, feedback, right? Well, actually, yes. If you have planning, you know what you want. So now control is letting manager know whether the goal or the plan they want, is achieved. Now, in real life, of course, we're saying that we cannot be 100%. But the question is, if it's not 100%, how far we are away from. Because sometimes we don't need to be perfect. So control is giving us a feedback like, am I going towards the right directions? Second, because we are going to assess all these informations, not only these informations let us know if the company is going to the right direction. It also gives workers some information and feedback. So workers will have this feedback and be able to do a better job. Now, some of you may find that why every class in the past, I will have consultations and, keep tracking on you every day, every time, team one, team two. My objective is, I hope that, if you talk to me, I will give you some feedback and that can improve your performance. I don't want really just hand me the project. Doing the project is a learning. So the more you talk to me, the more you know what I want, the more you know what needs to be done. Then at the end, I would say those students who talk to me and knowing what supposed to do, I was saying that there's no way they will fail because they are really in the right directions. So at work is the same thing. You would like the boss to let you know that are you going to the right directions? Very good or very bad, this is real different, right, at the end. But at least you are going to the right direction. Company is the same thing. The last one, of course, is called protecting the workplace, So controlling also mentioned about is the physical securities, is that are we making sure that the place we are working is safe and free from all the, hesitant interruptions. Okay, now, so actually you're actually saying that control is just as important. So we mentioned about the free process, right? So let's look at what are the free process. The first one is measuring actual performance. If we want to know about how well we are doing, we have to do comparison, right? But before we can compare, we have to know the standard we have and also the actual performance. So we're saying that before we do comparison, actually we want to know where are we right now? And then we'll be able to compare where are we right now with the one that we want against the standard. Now, standard, of course, here means that we think it is good enough at least, right? So if everything goes all right in step 2, you don't have to do anything. You're in the right direction, just continue. Now, but if something is not right, then you move on and you need to take managerial actions. So let's go into a little detail and look at, measuring actual performance. How? It's not that easy, right? Because it's not like something you can measure. So if we're talking about performance, how will you do it? In other words, how are we going to measure the info? Of course, some of the things you can look at, let's say your financial report, or you can look at the sales. Now, not everything can be quantified. You can measure it. What about customer satisfaction? If people don't complain, that means they are very happy about it. Not necessary, right? So first, we want to look at how we are going to measure it. Now, in order to measure it, you can have, of course, statistical report, written report. But some of the things you may have to use personal observations and sometimes oral reports. I remember at one time I was talking with the senior manager in McDonald's. And actually, he was the one who is going to inspect all the McDonald's in Hong Kong. So I asked him, what are you going to do? He said, they have two ways to control, measure how McDonald's are, doing it correctly, as what the franchise license mentioned. He said he would travel to every single McDonald's every day. That's what he did. And his job is be a secret buyer, like don't let McDonald's knows that they are visiting. Why? Because they want to do personal observations. Serving everywhere. I was asking, do you have to eat in every McDonald's? He said, oh no, not necessary. Otherwise, you go crazy, right? His job is eating everywhere. So we want to see that there's so many ways we can measure, and which way is better. Now, here are some of the lists that we have several ways to report it, right? We can do personal observation, statistical report, oral report, and written reports. Of course, there are some benefit, but also there will be some drawback, right? For example, personal observations, you can get the first-hand informations, and you don't need anybody to tell you, so you don't need to worry about, someone filter the information. Filter means that they will cover up some of the information. Now, but of course, the drawback is subject to personal bias. So if you are very, very clean persons, little dust, you'll be unhappy. So that is what we call personal bias. Observation sometimes depends on your own subjective opinion. And of course, it is sometimes is very time consuming because you may have to step back in time looking at it, and is also, obstructive. All right. Now, so statistical report also have some benefit and also will have some drawback. Especially when we're looking at a written report, right? Oh, that takes so much time to prepare it. Yeah, it is. Now, so it really depends on what kind of information you would like to. In real life, usually we will take more than one way to find out the information. In other words, is that will be better, and it is going to be, I was saying that more accurate, because you can, cover up some of the drawback from only one kind of observations or one kind of collecting feedback. All right, now, so let's go back to this one. So how are we going to measure? We have several different ways, right? Personal observation and all others. What we're going to measure? Now, what is measured is probably more critical to the process. In other words, are we going to measure every single little thing? Is it necessary? Oh, is it important? Now, so for example, building a building. What we need to measure, in other words, is what we want to know it is absolutely okay before we move on. Like, we want to make sure that the foundation of the building is fine, right? It is okay. It is safe before we're going to build the building on top. Now, so of course, building a house, we know, the structure is very important. That is what we mean by what is measured, what we want to measure. So in other words, we don't measure everything, but we want to measure the area which are most critical. Most critical means that very important, like building a building, the foundation is critical. And then you go and look at the building. Oh, well, the window is not very good. But still, it's less important than the foundation itself, right? So if you have more time, more money, and more manpower, you can measure more. If you have less, then you have to consider which are the most critical one, and you're going to measure that. All right. Now you know what is your existing performance, the actual performance. Now you're going to compare it with your standard that you want. Like I said, we cannot expect to be 100%. The question is, what is the standard? What is the level that we would like? Now, there is what we call the range of variation. That means acceptable parameters of variance between actual performance and the standard. Like you student as example, all right. Of course, we want you to know everything 100%, but we know that that is quite not possible, right? So we have a range of variation. That means that we want to see that, how good you are. Now, so I don't expect everyone to be 100, but I don't expect you to be very bad. Like, 10%. Now, university is already set out, saying that if you want to pass this course, even with a D, in the minimum, that the passing rate is 40%. Now, also, don't forget, you will have group performance, right? The group project and the individual performance, right? You know that in our department, if you have very good group performance, let's say you got an A in your group performance, but you did not do well in your final examinations, you still will fail. Why? Because we will put higher expectation on the individual performance and less in the group project. So in the past, some students say, oh, the group project, we have A, and now my exam is D. So if average it out, I'm supposed to pass, right? No, you can look at, I already mentioned it in lecture 1. It is also in your module outline that you have to pass your individual examination first. Because if you don't pass your individual examinations, even you have A in your group projects, you still fail the course. So be careful with this, all right? Now, beware of that because we know there could be free riders. So if your individual performance is not good enough, that doesn't prove that you will be able to do a good group project. So beware of that. That's why I'm saying that free rider, be careful. I told you a long time ago, make sure that you participate. Now, so this is what we call the range of variations. Now, how is the range of variations looks like? Now, for example, this is measure your performance. The higher, the better, all right? And this one is the standard that you want. This is what you want. And here is the time, okay? So if your performance is at here, is it okay? Yes, because this is the acceptance of performance. So in other words, between here and here, your performance is still acceptable. So if you are lower, yeah, still okay. Higher, still okay, as long as it's within this range. But if you fall here and here, fall outside the acceptable range of variation, then it is not okay. All right. Now, because in real life, things cannot be exactly in here. You will have variations. So this is what we mean by the range of variation. Now, how big it is, the difference, it is up to you what you think, what is acceptable. So it depends on the company and depends on whatever you are going to measure, okay? After you finish measuring it, of course, then you will take some managerial action. Let's assume that everything goes fine, then of course, no problem, right? But if something is not exactly what you want, you have to think of better see what you can do to control it or correct it, right? Now, sometimes you may need some what we call immediate corrective action because things are getting worse. You better do something at once because the longer you will let it go, the worse the case is going to be. Now, the other is called basic corrective action. That means you may have to consider what could cause the performance away from your standard, because sometimes it's not something that you can tell right away. So you have to think of why. What could be wrong if you are not achieving your objective? Is it only you because you don't do a good job? No. Sometimes maybe, is it you set the standard too high? That's possible too, right? You set it so high that it's impossible and we could just no way be able to do what you expected. Now, so here, let's look at this diagram. Although it looks complicated, you may have to consider, now here, the third one is revise the standard, right? If your performance is not achieving the goal, and it could be because your standard is too high that workers won't be able to achieve it. So here, let's look at the diagram. Very simple. You can look at it, understand it, and you can draw it yourself. And you can apply anything into it. Now, right? We start out with, you have an objective, what you want to achieve. Right? And then, we're saying that we cannot be 100%, right? So let's say that we want to sell 100%, or my product is 100% no defect. All right. My quality control want to be good, 100% no defect. That is your objective. And what is your standard? You say 99% will be okay. I want to be everything to be perfect, but 99% is okay. In other words, it's 100 products that I produce, I only allow one defect. Okay, that's what you want. So you have what you want, and then you can go and measure the actual performance. Go and look at it. You produce 100 units, how many defects are there? So you can compare what you want and the realities. So if you find out that, it is good because it's only one defect is good, this one is okay, because you're saying that is acceptable, right? So you don't have to do anything. Well, you're saying that, no, it turned out to be, I have 5 defects. Then you ask, is it okay? Is it acceptable? Because we say that there is a range of, we have a range of variation, right? Okay, you say 5 is still acceptable because among 100, we only have 5 defect one. Okay, if you think that that is your variation, you don't have to do anything because you counted that into your cost. In other words, is I spend the money to produce 100 units. I only expect 95 of them are good. But, your cost is already involved in it because if you want to change it, you have to redo it again. That will be more costly. So if you think that is good, all right. Now, if it is 6, then your question is, I have 6 defective products. Every time I have around 6 or 7. So your question is, am I asking too much? I want only 5 defects. But in reality, that is possible. We may have 6 to 7, defected good. Well, if that is the case, you say, well, maybe my expectation is too high. I want, I am expecting, too good. Then you can lower down your standard, right? So you lower down your standard, you say, okay, from now on, my a range of variations, I would say 7 is still acceptable. In other words, if I produce 100 units, if there is 7 of them are broken or defect, still I can make sales and can make profit with only 93 products. You still can make profit, okay. Then you're going to change your standard. But if you say, no, if I have 7 defective broken goods, then I may be losing money. So if that is the case, you have to think of what caused that you have so many, defective good, broken good, and you do have to, correct it and think of, where and what can be improved. Now, so this is the managerial decision in the control process. Basically, it's only 3 steps. You set the standard, you do the comparison. And after the comparison, you have to ask, either you set the standard too high or your performance is not good. That's it, right? So I think that this concept is very simple and you can apply to everything that you want. Like, you're picking a girlfriend. You want your girlfriend to be rich, beautiful, young, and very caring. Everything you want. You find a girlfriend. You do the comparison. Is she as good as what you expected? You say no. Then my question is it you expect too high? If you say, no, my expectation is not too high, then you better look for another one. But if your expectation is too high, then I'm saying, come on, lower down your expectations. Otherwise, you'll never find a girlfriend. That's it, right? That is the control process. Okay, now, next thing, we want to say, we always say performance, correct performance. So exactly what is performance? You have a mission, but we already say, how do you measure the missions, right? Okay, now we move on to another one is, what is organizational performance? It's not just how many sales, because company will look at overall performance. So the so-called performance is the work itself means the end result of an activities. That means you have a lot of activities, but that is the end of the whole activities. Now, organization performance is more difficult to evaluate because it is a accumulated result of all organization work activities. Different departments will have different activities and you put them all together. And all this together, like you hardly will use a number to measure. Because for example, if your production line is not good, your service is not good, the sales is not good, everything can contribute to the organization performance. So you say, then how are we going to measure it? Now, here are some of the very basic ideas, because it actually in real life, it depends on what kind of organization you are thinking of. If you are manufacturing, you probably can look at your productivities, right? What is the input and how are the output, right? The efficiency, right? You want to use the minimum input to get the maximum output, and that is organization performance. You go back to the word efficiency. Now, of course, we move upward in organizational effectiveness. That is, did you achieve your goal, your mission? That is effectiveness. Now, this is looking at the direction of your company. Now, one more thing that we want to measure is how good is your organization compared with the other company, because sometimes we hardly can tell that if your company is doing well. Can it be better? It could be, right? So what do we mean by good? Now, so some of the organizations will have to do comparison. Now, how they do comparison? You probably in your own company may not have enough information about other company. So in the world market, we have something called industry and company rankings. That means there is an outside body, the third party, is going to evaluate that each company, how well they are doing. Like, for example, you probably heard of the 10 biggest brand name in the world. Who did it? Of course, it's not from one company. It's an individual organization is going to measure how famous is your brand. And then, they say they will be able to see that how expensive the brand name is. That's how they come up. Now, you heard of all the time that they say Fortune 500. Fortune 500 is a American independent organization, is to measure which are the top 500 company in America. They have a lot of this kind of independent organizations to evaluate each company and see which one is best. So in America they have something like the top 500 company in the country, and they even have the 10 best company worker like to work for. These are the measurement of the company performance. Now, what about university, right? How can you tell which university is better? Now, of course, all universities say that they are good, right? But it's very difficult for you to evaluate university. What do you mean by good? Good may means what? They have more research output, or the student after they graduate they have a higher monthly salary, or those students who graduate from the university have better future. Now, so all this is quite difficult to evaluate the company, the university by itself. And you probably heard of that in the world market, they have some people to measure how good the university is. Now, how they're going to measure Harvard University is the best, and how they're going to evaluate, Stanford University is the best. They don't evaluate themselves. It's an outsider is going to evaluate. So they will come up with a list. What are the things they're going to measure, and they compare from one company to the others, and they can come up with the top 100 business schools in the world. Actually, don't be surprised, Hong Kong have several universities also in the, world, best university, the top 100. Now, Hang Seng U is a young university. It doesn't mean Hang Seng U is not a good one. It's just quite young. That means that it just be a university in the recent years. So they don't have enough information to measure, because we haven't have student graduate yet. So who knows? I think that Hang Seng U may become one of the top 100 university in the world in the near future. And at that time, you may be proud that you are graduate from Hang Seng U, right? Excuse me. Now, after we're looking at organizations, we also want to look at individuals, the employees. So we also want to give some feedback to the employees. So control actually is saying that, we look at the employee performance and giving them some feedback. Hopefully they will be able to improve it. Now, of course, if all your management technique, it doesn't work, like I said, my whole semester's PowerPoint only, the very last one is talking about discipline. That means if all the positive things you do is still not working, sorry, you have to use the negative one, that is the discipline action. Now, even you are going to punish your workers, but we strongly recommend that you give them warning first, letting them know, hey, things are not doing well. So this is what we call progressive discipline action. Progressive discipline means that you start up with verbal warning, a friendly reminder, actually. And if things are not working well, you give them a written warning. And if written warning is still not possible to improve, you may have some suspension. That means that no pay, you go home, suspended for 3 months or 2 months, and it's still not doing well, then you dismiss. Now, right now in Hong Kong, based on the Hong Kong employment law, if the company want to fire a worker, unless it is criminal. Now, if it is criminal, the company can fire the workers immediately. But if it's just performance, it is required the company to give out verbal warning and written warning. So the manager may give verbal warning to the workers. If still not improving, you can write down written warning letters. Now, in Hong Kong, it's very seldom we have suspensions. Usually is the company will have some policy say that giving you 2 written warning. If you're still not improving, then dismissal. That means fire. So Yes, I always saying that as a good managers, trying to use all the positive way to motivate your worker first. But you know, if some people is still not doing well, so the very last thing is punishment, and or we call it, giving them warning before you dismiss them. All right, that's all the lecture material I provide for you for this semester. And I must say, I want to thank you for joining my class and study hard. Hope you are not going to see me again next semester. If you fail, you have to come back and see me again next semester because I'm still the module coordinator. Sorry about it. That's why I say study hard. Don't want to see me again, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, any questions on all these lecture materials? Anything you want me to repeat or any comments on that? Now, a lot of the things you learn in management, actually, I say